Welcome, everybody, to Bar Talk, episode 19, live from the Relief and Resource Co. I am your host, John Foley, coming to you, as always, from Fenton, Michigan. We've got Marc Miller.
Yeah.
Courtney Booms.
Hello.
And we're going to do a follow-up to an episode we did a while back on Highlands malts. But now we're going to tackle Islay single malts and Islay malt whiskey in general. Second in our Scotch series, focusing on the whiskey specifically from the Islay region.
The Smoky boys.
Yeah. Big Smoky boys, yeah. And this is interesting because it's a style of whiskey popular the world over, but also still seen as a niche whiskey for a lot of people. And it'll be interesting to kind of talk about it and talk about why we like it, because we all do. Mm-hmm. Why other people don't, because they're wrong.
And it's okay to be wrong.
It is.
You know, in this day and age, there's a lot of wrong people. Mm-hmm. But, hopefully Scotch can more often than not bring people together.
Scotch will bridge the gap. This episode will
be a divide,
will bring us all together.
Yeah. I think that's true.
So worth mentioning, of course, that we're sponsored and produced by iLogic Media. Please check out all of their other content on iLogic Media, Spotify, YouTube, etc. They have a couple new shows, I think, too. Yeah,
or about to be new shows.
Bitches and Brews, I think they announced one, which is going to focus on women in the beverage industry, the beer industry. And I think, I know he's got a contact with the lady whose name I forgot, who wrote the book, A Woman's Place is in the Brew House, which is supposed to be a great book about the history of women's role in brewing, which is probably going to be a real good read.
Yeah, I haven't read it, but it looks to be an interesting read for sure.
Yeah, throw barley wine in your glass. Set your feet up.
Yeah.
Put that in your brain. Okay, so Courtney.
Hey, what's up?
We're turning it over to you because you've got the immaculate amount of research on
a little too much research.
Literally,
I've got to find a way to pare it down.
7 pages, which is a lot, but it's going to be good. And we're going to taste through some good stuff and tackle how this whiskey is made and how it results in the most unique and specific style of whiskey in the world.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Ridiculously unique. Excuse me. And you'd already mentioned everybody basically knows about Islay Scotch, whether they enjoy it or not, just because of its kind of super robust, very obviously unique structure.
Mm-hmm. A lot of people think that this is what all Scotch tastes like.
Right, yeah, a common misconception, and yet they would have been right at one point in time, but aren't today.
So. Those were the days.
If I can, I'm going to give a brief recap of Scotch whiskey, because we did cover a lot of it in episode 8 as far as how it got developed over time. So
that was 11 episodes ago.
That was 11 episodes ago.
It feels
really
like a lifetime,
guys. Yeah, I'm proud of us. All right, so Scotch originates with the development of the early grain spirit called aquavite, which we mentioned before. Mm-hmm. This would have been developed by monks using distillation techniques taken from the Middle East around 600 AD, and it forms its way to a more distinct barley-based spirit called uskebaha or uskebetha around the 1400s. It would be 1494 that the first recorded year of Scotch production was happening in Scotland.
I think a fantastic takeaway from that is that it's okay if you're a monk and you're a little bit bored. You can be super dedicated, serving God, but there's going to be some time in the day.
But there's a lot of grain.
You're going to dick around with the grain a little bit.
And it's getting a little fermenty and it smells interesting.
And you don't waste.
Give it a taste.
Yeah.
The monks like to drink. If we've learned anything from doing this podcast, it's that monks.
Why do you think they serve wine at every Catholic mass?
Very true. Very true.
It's just my opinion. I don't know that to be true, but I was Catholic once. So
I was too.
In the dark time.
Yes.
And we drink wine.
Yeah.
All right. Over time, whiskey becomes more refined, right? They start to produce outside of monastic distilleries, and it becomes a daily ingratiated part of Scottish life. So the government starts taking note. They start collecting taxes on the spirit. That's when you start having illicit production of Scotch, even so far as having it being hidden under pulpits.
Taxing starts when?
Taxing starts almost 100 years later, so around 1600.
Sticking it to the man.
Yeah.
Sticking it to the man. And taxmen were often referred to as gougers by the public. So
that's a good one.
Public discontent with taxmen.
Yeah, gougers is fun.
You might remember the story about the ladies of Cardew from our Women in Whiskey episode, which would have been episode 5. And I'll
How
say,
do you remember this?
I looked it up.
She did the research for this
It's
episode.
in my notes. Yeah. I don't remember it off the top of my head.
She's supposed to remember this stuff.
This is really the brains
And then tell
behind
us,
this
and we're
whole
like,
thing.
oh, wow, really?
So I'll say one quick fun fact about tax collectors. Scotland's
Nothing's
bard,
fun about tax
No.
collectors.
Scotland's bard Robert Burns was a tax collector before he became a famous poet, and he wrote a poem about Scotch whiskey, just called Scotch Drink, and it talks about the true nature of Scotch bringing together people together, very joyful happiness. Your occasions when you drink Scotch.
Yeah.
I just thought that was fun.
Scotch, I like I said, I love it because it does bring people together. Or if you're me, it'll sometimes make you cry if you drink too much.
Yeah, well,
So-
I've been there for that. Yeah.
Multiple times.
It'll bring you
Scotch
together
wines, too.
with all the people that you drink scotch with, taking you away from all the people you don't drink scotch with until you're only friends with the people you drink scotch with. So don't go that far to Scotch Drink. Scotch Drink 2, The Lonely Tunnel.
That's a movie?
No, but we're
Poem.
I'm gonna write it tomorrow.
I like it. So besides that fun little fact, we'll say that Scotch was basically made almost in the same style as Irish whiskey for a very long time, except that they used peats for their kiln, so to dry them, to dry the barley,
They would burn only the gentleman named Pete in
Yes.
the area.
All
Yes.
dudes named Peter
Mhm.
run for you.
That's why you'll never find a Scotsman named Peter
or-
anymore.
We'll get further into what peat is, but it changes from the style of production from pot still to column still, or column style of still in 1831 when Anais Coffee develops the patent still. So it just makes it goes a lot faster. It's continuous distillation, so you don't actually have to stop and reset, so to speak. And then you can also start to incorporate other grains, so it wouldn't just be barley. After some time, you start to mix in other malted and unmalted grains, wheat, even like millet and stuff like that would be added to it to create like a more rounded sense of the Scotch, and that made it an easier sell to the world market.
But this essentially is the beginning of what, and this is like a schism, like a Scotch and Irish schism in terms of like this moment kind of extrapolates out and creates the two styles, even in terms of how they taste,
Precisely.
because that still was offered to the Irish first. They're like, no, we don't want
Yeah,
it.
they
right?
liked the tradition.
Right.
They wanted to keep the style. They
And the
thought it
Scots
was
were like, well, we can make a
producing
whole lot
dull
more of it
whiskey.
right now,
Yeah.
so we're going to take that and do it.
yes,
And you can be a regional spirit now, and we're going to be an international spirit.
basically,
Yeah.
yeah, because like it'd be Doors and Chivas would be the first two kind of major Scotch production companies that would get a world market because of their connections elsewhere as well,
Mhm.
but also because their distilleries took on the coffee still, and that made it
Pumping it
so
out.
quick and so common for them to just be having barrels
Popping it
and
out.
barrels.
Yeah. And if I'm sure you get into this at some point, but ports obviously play a massive
Port and
role
sherry
in this.
cask
No, I mean like port, like boats,
Oh,
like
ports
because
of
all of
call,
these, a lot
yes.
of these are all situated around areas where you can easily get it out.
Well, specifically Islay, yes.
Yeah.
But the most common, the largest port was Campbelltown, which was the peninsula in Scotland,
Mhm.
that not only had rail systems but also had boat access. So that kind of combination really, really buffs out Scotch production. I should say too. So I said coal and, or I said rail systems and ports are a big deal, but coal and using coke to heat the whiskey as well as peat. So peat for flavor. And then you start using coal and its byproduct coke to evenly distribute the heat in the drying process, and so you can produce malted grain faster as well.
Yes.
Mhm.
Did we discuss
Fraction.
previously, for people who may not know, what a malted grain actually is? Have we talked about that before?
A while ago.
Yeah, I think we
Okay.
have. But
Just making sure.
generally speaking, malted grain is grain that's been like bloomed almost. So you give it wet conditions first, so that the grain itself starts to sprout.
Partial
then
germination.
Partial
Yeah.
germination. Then as soon as it starts sprouting, you give it all that heat, and then it stops. It like cooks it, so it stops what it's doing.
It's grain edging.
Yeah.
basically.
Oh.
That is a lovely.
Not the reference
Elegant
I thought you were
way to
about
put
to
it.
use, but yeah, it works.
Yeah,
Yeah,
basically,
grain edging.
basically, when you malt a grain, you're releasing some of those sugars, so those sugars can be distilled, right?
Yeah, go. Stop. Stop. No.
Grain
No, no
edging.
sugar.
No. You're not ready yet.
We are now an R-rated podcast, although I feel like we've always been. Anyhow,
We're talking about spirits. You got to be at least 21, 18 in
come
some
on.
countries. Yeah. Not that I think we're reaching like Canada already. Maybe.
did you
Fingers
say we're
crossed.
giving a reach around to Canada?
Yeah,
Okay, cool.
we're Michigan.
Hey! Well,
Those
said,
only
Dylan.
listening have just got the mitten on.
Yeah. High five.
All right, so that's kind of a short history of the production of Scotch, and then we did talk about the regions super well in the last one in the Highlands episode. But since we're all here, and perhaps Sean Cole can throw up that same map from before, you're going to be looking at the British Islands. You've got, I had to do a quick mental. So you've got the UK on this side, and you've got Ireland on this side, Ireland and Northern Ireland. Scotland's going to take up the first third, basically, of the UK side, northernmost to almost midway. And then you've got England here, and then Wales to the side. And then in Scotland, you've got the Highlands, takes up the most of the northern part of the landmass. Speyside is within it. It forms like a little triangle almost midway. Then you've got the islands, which will kind of ridge the edge of Scotland. Islay is a specific island within that region. It's close to Campbelltown, which is the lower western peninsula of Scotland. And then you've got the lowlands, which would make up the rest of the landmass that borders England, basically.
Yeah, so all of the islands are like on basically the south to southwestern side of
Mainly,
Scotland,
but you do
right?
have some northern, like the Hebrides and
True.
stuff.
Or Orkney as well.
Or Orkney as well.
Very northern.
Scotland has about 800 coastal islands, and only like
It's too many.
12 of them are populated.
So they got to trade some of those other ones.
Guys, let's
No,
go
it's-
claim our own Scottish islands.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
And produce our whiskey on it?
We'll put a bar on it.
Yes, sir.
That'll be it.
Yeah. A bar and a distillery and
You have
nothing
to fly
else.
via helicopter to get there.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty exclusive.
Yeah.
All right.
Jetpack, actually, not helicopter.
Oh,
jetpack.
right. Yes. The time is now. We are in
Yeah.
the future.
Yes.
Yeah.
yes.
All right. But if you're not jetpacking to our secret island, you might go to Islay. So it is pronounced Islay, which we
Yes.
did mention briefly before.
Islay.
Mhm.
Islay.
And then it carries a lot of heavy hitter distilleries, but some of the biggest names are Ardbeg, Lagavulin, and Lefroy.
Yeah, and if you come into a bar and say you like Scotch and you've had some Islay whiskeys and you're not sure which ones you like, just if somebody corrects you, just roll with it.
Yeah.
No, don't feel
Yeah.
bad because this stuff's pretty hard to pronounce if you haven't gotten into it. And I think more often than not, the people who really know about Scotch and know about whiskey, like we want you to try to enjoy it. So we're not going to laugh at you.
Yeah.
The first time.
Too bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As a fun aside, I had a guy in here a couple of weeks ago who was swearing up and down that it was pronounced Islay because he had a Scotsman tell him it was pronounced Islay, and my response was, "That guy is not from Scotland."
Or he's trolling
Or
you.
he's fucking
Yeah,
with you.
yeah, exactly.
It's very obvious.
No, mate, just say it. They'll correct you, but that's the real way. That's how we say it over there.
Just say it. Just do it. No, so it is Islay.
It's Islay.
Yeah. But basically, a lot of people do think of it as like rowdy, in-your-face smoke with big body and like a lingering peat that you like burp up the next day. But not all Islays like that. That's kind of the ones that you
And
think
sometimes
of
you
a
burp it
lot,
up
maybe.
right away,
Yeah.
That's
like
true.
right after you drink it.
Or
Yeah.
sometimes, if you're like me, the
You have it
next
with
day
soda.
when you're in a really hot shower, you just reek of peat smoke, and you're like, "Why did I make these decisions in my life?" Yeah, it's a
That
fun
happens
time.
whenever I make myself curry.
Oh,
Yeah.
and then you have-
and my
you take
shower
a-
smells like curry spices. It's awesome.
That's hot.
Anyway, I think it's important. I just want to stop and like do this for a second right now because I'm going to hit it later, right? But
Yeah.
like we're going to start talking about these, and we're going to mention smoke and like in every one of them. But
It's levels.
smoke in whiskey can be a balanced and elegant flavor too,
Oh,
Yes.
right? So it's about your palate expectations, and this gets into the weird subjectivity of how you taste things and what you've brought to any plate of food or any beverage that you drink. So we all have associative stuff in our in our palate memory, in our olfactory memory, based on everything else that we have had up to that point.
Right.
So that tastes harsh because, especially as Americans, we don't ever like eat or drink anything like that.
We don't.
So it's
incorporate a lot of-
really
yeah.
hard to get over it, and it will always taste harsh. But if you start eating and drinking these things like curry,
Yeah.
or like blue cheese, or like sipping on
Scotch.
peated scotch, it will eventually become a flavor that you're used to, and then you can see how it's integrated and how it develops in terms of balance
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
in the beverage. And I think that's a big, like maybe the single biggest hurdle for getting into scotch, I think, for the American drinker.
Especially if you want to start dipping your toe into Islay, almost
Yes.
the first kind of introductory scotch.
Yeah.
Especially then.
Yeah. And like, and I think bourbon creates that hurdle. Like bourbon makes that hurdle even worse.
Yeah.
Because okay, I've been drinking. I know I love whiskey. I've been drinking bourbon for 4 years. I really, really love it, but I just can't get into Scotch. It's because you've been wrapping your palate in corn sugar and freshly charred oak barrel sweetness. This runs completely contrary to that.
Yeah, I was just to add into it shortly. It's to me, a bourbon drinker has a sweet palate, and a Scotch drinker has a savory palate.
Usually,
you can get sweetness from Scotch, but like the cereal grain and some of the things that happen when you're using malted barley instead of corn does give you more of that like savory taste, at least in my mind.
I definitely have a more savory palate. I will slap a Belgian waffle out of your hand.
Child's hand?
Your hand. Out of a child's hand, a sweet child's hand. Get that out of my face.
I want me some eggs.
Where are my sausages?
Yeah. Well, and another cool thing too, talking about the smoke that is inherent in Islay Scotches is that once you kind of get your palate acclimated to it, you'll start noticing that even though they are all smoky, there's different kind of like intricacies in the flavor of the smoke too.
Like cream and apple. And
yeah. Or for example, like like Ardbeg and Lefroy are kind of a more like medicinal kind of smoke, whereas like Lagavulin is very like rich and like almost campfire.
Yeah. So, and like different levels of salinity and brininess to them as well. Yeah.
So that's a good segue to talk about peat, what peat is and how it influences Islay Scotch. So peat is defined as a semi-decomposed carbonized plant material. It's also known as turf. And it's the most readily accessible fuel source in all of Scotland, including so much on Islay that it should last them into the next millennia.
Just keep digging it out of the ground and setting it on fire, and you'll never freeze.
So basically,
you'll smell
so good.
Very, very delicious.
Very smoky, but also so good. It's the accumulation of water in boglands that slows down the decomposition of the natural organic materials. So it's things like moss, tree roots, grasses, dead stuff. Yeah, you've heard of maybe the Irish bog bodies or other bog bodies in the UK
bog bodies are cool.
The preservation of it.
These guys, they just keeled over and died or were killed and then went right into bog turf. And then they stayed there. And then eventually somebody
hit the bog.
And people find them later and it's like, oh, that guy's still mostly a guy. I can still see all of it. I can still all of his.
No, I don't think there are any bog bodies in the peat that they use in distillation process. You could prove me wrong, distilleries, if you want, but I feel like you might get arrested. Who knows?
That's gonna be our thing. That'll be our niche when we get the island.
We only smoke our whiskey with
bog bodies.
Bog bodies. Yep.
That's so metal.
The brand makes itself.
That's so metal.
Bog bodies, 127 proof.
Yep.
That's the number.
I think so. Why not?
Yeah. If you add it up, it makes 10, so it's a good luck number.
Hey, okay. All right.
So this readily available peat, just to swing us back into the conversation that we had before, would warm the hearth and home, but it would also be used in the kilns to dry all these barleys for all these different distilleries. So when peat is burned, especially, it produces a super fragrant, very earthy smoke, sometimes medicinal. So that's something that Marc had said about Lefroy and Ardbeg in particular. And what's happening is phenols are being released from the smoke, and they're incorporating themselves into the actual grain of the barley itself. Brings forth flavors like tar and iodine and smoke and campfire smoke as well. And to know how much peatiness has been imbued into your Scotch of choice, distillers and scientists use a measure of phenol parts per million, or ppm. They use a device similar to a mass spectrometer, and they can actually test the molecular quantities of those phenols in the malt itself. They actually don't use the same process for post-distillation or even while it's in the mash bill. So you're only getting the ppm of the grain before the process. And then so during the process, you can lose more of than what you had measured, but you're getting an average. So it's a very generalized reading.
Well, and if you do it with enough whiskey, we start to see the trends and we start to know what number equates to what's going to taste like on our palate.
Which have lower numbers and which have higher numbers. Apparently Lefroy and Lagavulin are meant to have a fairly similar level of phenol parts per million. And yet when you taste them, I consider Lefroy to be a much more robust smokiness and Lagavulin's to be a little bit more refined. And that has to do with what happens with those grains afterwards, really. Yeah,
and Lagavulin's a maltier, richer base, too. Lagavulin is lighter and more... Lefroy is lighter and more silky. I think the best analog I have for it in beverage is IBUs for beer.
International Bitterness Unit.
The measurement hoppiness, for better or worse, and bitterness in beer. So you'll have beers that have extremely low, negligible amounts of IBUs, like Belgians, and then you'll have IPAs that are extremely high. And after
doubles or nepos.
Yeah, exactly. And you will have this kind of threshold for what you can actually taste on your palate, and afterwards it's just huge.
Yeah, they say that you can't read anything between like about 10 and lower ppms. A majority of scotches are sitting around, I'm going to double check with my notes here, around 20 ppm or so.
And that's just anything.
Yeah, Bruichladdich has some really high ones. So they have like 167, I think, is that their Port Islay Scottish barley, heavily peated. Port Charlotte, Port Charlotte, Islay barley, heavily peated. Boom, got it. But then they can get the other end of the scale completely. So with like Octomore, they can go over their peatiest one has been over 300.
Which at that point it just tastes smoky as hell.
It's very blowing out your palate with nothing but peat, probably.
It would be very difficult, I think, for most people to differentiate between 200, 250, and 300 ppms. And
then the last note about peats smoking all the peats is that basically Islay, the more remote parts of the Highlands, and then like a lot of the islands, Orkney and stuff, for instance, they kept peat smoking even though the rail systems and all that came out, because they were still so heavily isolated, but because they also preferred the tradition of using peat smoke. And that's why you'll start to see Highlands, the old ways, the Space side, and even some Campbelltons, they can dull that down because they have other sources of heating using coal and coke, like we mentioned before.
Which will dry the barley, but not impart the flavor.
Exactly.
And the specific, almost regional character.
Right. Yeah. Mostly it's producing heat.
Which is interesting because you will taste this type of smokiness in other whiskeys. It'll usually be more of a hint. Yeah. But it's not because of the regionality of the whiskey itself. It's because of the regionality of the grain or the process by which the grain is produced.
Precisely.
Terroir, if you will.
Right. And there's a huge debate as to whether or not terroir is something that you can actually taste in Scotch. I am a proponent that you can.
I think absolutely. Yeah.
And it's central to my argument as to why I enjoy Scotch far more than bourbon. And we'll get into that a little bit later too.
Yeah. Other distilleries use peat too without even having to be in Scotland. So you've got Irish Connemara is peated. You can find it in Japanese, Indian, and New Zealand scotches.
See some of the stuff blended into American whiskeys like High West Campfire.
Exactly. Yeah.
Even that one, what is it? Penderyn
Celt
has a little bit of kind of like peat.
And if you're looking for a local reference, Johnny Smoking Gun. Which is made in Detroit. Which was designed to go with ramen.
You were going to say something, Booms?
Yeah, Penderyn Celt is aged in Lafroig barrels. So their
that's where it's
make
coming
is
from.
Not actually peated, but they do use a peated barrel, and so you get the flavor there.
Okay. Fun facts. Learn something new every day.
This is where the little thing goes over the banner. It says fun facts. Okay, so we can start getting into the history of popular Islay distillers if you like, or if you want to talk about Port Ellen, or you want to bring that up.
Well, let's talk about Port Ellen right away, though, because that's where some of this malt's still coming from.
A lot of big
Port Ellen hasn't been open as a distillery for decades. It used to be one of the biggest producers of peated single malt Scotch.
Yes,
and absolutely one of the finest small pours of whiskey I've ever had in my life was a Port Ellen from 1979, aged 24 years. Thank you, James Halliman, for dropping that off before you moved up to Traverse City all those years ago. I shared a little bit with you.
Yes, you did.
That stuff was so good, I wanted to fight everybody in the room on the off chance that somebody had another dram in their pocket or knew somebody who did, so that they could say, like, stop hitting me, I'll tell you where more is. Even though that would be an extremely
Are you a Bond villain in this scenario?
Long shot. Bond villain.
General.
The Tom Hardy and Lawless. I don't know, like something. I just wanted more of it immediately, and I knew I would have a hard time getting more. Yeah, but it was great.
What's the family of like drunks from It's Always Sunny? What are their names? Do you remember?
The McPoyles.
The McPoyles.
Yeah, except they're drinking milk most of the time, right? She's wearing nothing but she's got a t-shirt and a unibrow, which is like mute.
But they're the kind of people that would do that.
Yeah,
they would fight someone.
Well, if you had an army of McPoyles, you could probably get some stuff done.
That's very true.
The other day.
We did have an army of Foley's. Check it out on our Instagram,
very
Relief
fun.
and Resource.
Good. We'll get that group together again.
Are we done talking about Port Ellen?
No.
Okay.
It's really important.
Okay.
Stop goofing around.
Greatest malts. It was just one of the greatest malt houses on all of Islay. So the fact that they broke down production is not uncommon because a lot of these distilleries had periods where they were closed, open, and
Yeah, we're lucky to have a lot of them anyway now.
Yeah.
But that facility
have
is
the
still
malt house.
producing. Yeah, that was
Exactly. The
my
point is
lead
that
in.
they concentrated the best thing that they were at, which is producing incredible malt.
Mhm.
And they just kind of said, okay, I can't finance this anymore. We're just going to focus on this and we're going to send our malt out to others. And they do a fantastic job.
But it's coming back.
That's true. Dun, 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 dun.
Port Ellen Distillery is going to reopen for the first time, I think, since 1983.
That's what it
So
was.
yeah, that's when they closed, and now we'll reopen. And it's Diageo behind it. So
Oh,
it may take a while for us to actually drink any new Port Ellen whiskey, but
they're in the process.
it'll be around because Diageo's got a bunch of money.
Rock on, way to go,
And
Port
I think they're also trying to reopen Brora.
We talked
which
about
I've
that.
heard. Yeah.
for the Highlands episode.
Yeah. They suggested the new release might be of a 12-year-old expression in 2032.
Woo!
So hold your horses.
Well, that's what I was just about to say too. Like, it's probably like the minimum you would be looking at, like age-wise, would be what? Probably like an 8-year. If you want
12
something
to
like
8, I'd
really
say,
lean and
yeah.
hot.
Well, they
coming from
did.
a new
They did the
distillery.
announcement in
29.
2010
Right.
or 2020. Excuse me. So it is going to come out 12 years from then.
Yeah.
They have some backstock too, so there may be
A blend.
some
Fingers crossed.
some larger age statement that we non-age statement that we can't afford and we'll never be able to buy.
The point being, though, that this stuff takes time.
Mhm.
You can't just distill it and then throw it in a barrel and
No, it's a labor of love.
the next day drink it.
Yeah.
It takes time.
Not if you want it to taste like anything.
No, right.
Yeah. Anything other than just alcohol burn and heat bodies.
Old wood.
Yeah.
So Port Ellen's a good stopping point just to kind of describe that, that Islay itself has great production and a lot of different distilleries, but even then they have like more focused great distilleries as well. So the biggest one, I did it in alphabetical order. Is that the way we'd like to go?
Sure.
The biggest one for us, I hope you don't mind me speaking for the three of us, is Ardbeg.
Yeah.
Ardbeg.
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 It means small height.
Small height. Does this mean we can finally drink some of this stuff?
Oh, go on.
It's just been sitting in front of us.
Go on with your
And my
bad
mouth
stuff.
has been watering. And this is a new bottle. So that's cool.
It is a brand new bottle. So this behemoth in Scotch started producing in 1798, but it legally was producing starting in 1815 under John MacDougall and received its first commercial license at that time.
Ardbeg.
Let's see.
Was that the 10?
Yeah.
We're going to taste anything that we give you tasting notes is going to be on the 10-year, which is their flagship, the most readily available whiskey from Ardbeg.
Are you guys ready for it? Ready?
Yeah.
Ready?
Pop. Woo. So beautiful. It started by John MacDougall. It was bought out by Thomas Buchanan in 1838, but the MacDougall family continued to run it. So after Buchanan died, John's sisters, Margaret and Flora, took on the distillery, and they were Scotland's first registered female distillers at that point.
Outstanding.
Outstanding. Well done, ladies. We did mention it a little bit in our episode
Briefly.
5, briefly. Today, Ardbeg is owned by the Glenmorangie Company, which is in turn owned by Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy.
Baller.
Louis got a part
You
of
may
that?
have
I didn't
heard
know.
all of
Louis
those
Vuitton
things
Moet
before.
Hennessy is the
It's a
big company.
Conglomerate.
Yeah, so it's not just booze. It's
They sell all kinds of things.
yeah,
Purses, shoes,
fashion.
fashion.
Yeah.
It's called fashion, Henny.
Yeah, fashion Henny, like Hennessy.
Yeah, exactly.
That was a
Ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba.
turbo
Segway.
pun. Yeah.
So they do have, is it 5 flagships now? Full flagships?
If WeBC is meant to stay, it's 5. Yeah.
Which I think it is.
Yeah.
BBC, 10-year, Anol, Corabrechin, and Ugadile. If
Yep.
I'm pronouncing those correctly, which I believe I am. And yeah, after their first year of ownership under Glenmorangie and therefore Louis Vuitton, they won Distillery of the Year in 1998. And then in 2008, they won Jim Murray's World Whiskey of the Year, and then again the following year, and then again after that. I think most of those awards were held by Core of Reckon in particular.
Yeah, Core of Reckon and Supernova might have won one.
Supernova, yeah, super interesting release too.
Anno was placed in the top 5 of Whiskey Advocate the minute it came out.
Mm-hmm.
Ardbeg regularly posts in the Whiskey Advocate's top 20.
Yeah.
And it's been a Whiskey of the Year. One of the releases has been a Whiskey of the Year here. 3 out of the 5 years since we've opened, at least on somebody's list. And a consensus with NO when that first opened.
Yeah, pretty much in our eyes in this bar, Ardbeg can do no wrong, really.
I've had some releases that I don't like as more as other releases, but in the same breath, I still really, really like them.
Yeah.
I think it's the balance for me. I mean, I'm obviously somebody who's extremely attracted to what Pete does in whiskey.
Yeah.
But there's an exceptional balance with Ardbeg where I get almost whiskey to whiskey, a silkiness on the front palate that kind of brings into a really rich and almost creamy mid palate before giving way to all of that smoke.
Yeah.
And it's just that elegance and balance in the way that the whiskey is put together that makes it just fantastic.
Yeah. The creaminess that you mentioned, I always think of it like butter.
Butter.
Just, so buttery.
Yeah. And to get into the bourbon thing again, one of the reasons Scotch's age statements are older is they have to sit in those barrels for longer. They are not newly charred. It does not impart vanilla and caramel and butterscotch and all those baking spices into the whiskey the way that it happens with bourbon.
Yeah.
These whiskeys take longer, and by and large, body-wise, they are leaner.
Yeah.
You know, so it is not as accessible. It doesn't taste like dessert, or at least the desserts that we know. Yeah. So you've got to, if you really want to get into it, and if you don't, then great. Who cares? And you can drink a lot of bourbon, and bourbon's great. But if you do want to get into it, I think it requires patience.
Absolutely, yeah.
Especially if you're doing something like Supernova. Don't they age it in space?
Yes. Yes.
That blew my mind the first time I read that, you guys.
Yeah. It's aged in space.
That release was 2014, but we have the 2019?
15 or 16. Oh, yeah, no. It was 2019 was the re-release. Yeah, 14 or 15 was the first one. But you always get people to say, you know anything about that Jefferson's? They put it on a boat.
Yeah, do you know about Ardbeg? They put their shit in space.
They put it on a boat? That's cool.
Did you guys see what this year's committee release is going to be? The new release they're doing?
No, because Scorch was last year, wasn't it?
Yeah. I can't remember the name of it, but I'm pretty sure it has something to do with like wild fermentation.
Yeah.
Ooh.
And the branding's like alien spaceships and shit.
It's awesome.
Yeah. So that should be interesting to try.
Ready for it.
Yeah. And these guys are going to do kind of a special release or two a year. They're called committee releases. If you can find them, get them. And then sometimes they go out and they become like a wider release where more bottles are let go. Oftentimes you will see a difference in proof between a committee release and like the regular release of the special release of the whiskey. For instance, the Scorch that came out last year was a jump from, I think, 105 or 104 all the way down to 92. Mm-hmm. The committee release was very different.
Yeah.
So get those if you can.
Which I think you have to like sign up and be a part of like the special committee, right? You can't just go out and buy it.
No,
you can just kind of sign up for the committee.
You can be a committee member. Like I'm a committee member.
Yeah.
And you can go out and sign up and be a committee member, and then you can get a chance to buy them online. But stores and taverns, if you sell enough Ardbeg, you'll get committee releases.
Gotcha.
And then you'll get like 3 bottles of it. Yeah. The standard allocation, the way that it all works, you know.
Okay.
Cool.
Well, I'd say we all collectively really love Ardbeg, and that the 10-year is an excellent try. I love the way you described it.
It's so good.
Oh, well, I've had enough of it to know.
Yeah.
It's part of me now.
This was the first single malt that made me love single malts. I was
Really?
super weird. Like coming from
you're-
not working with spirits before working here, the first time I tasted Ardbeg, I was like, oh, let's go.
Yeah.
This is what I want whiskey to taste like.
So I have to say, I'm a little bit opposite of the scale. I was introduced to Islay a little bit more gently because my first whiskey was Glenfiddich, because that's what was like commonly available at my house. But Bowmore is the Islay that convinced me to start liking Islay.
Yeah.
And so that's the next one.
I believe it's next on our list. Yeah.
On the list.
I can't remember what it was for me. I mean, I literally was trying to drink scotch as an undergrad by buying like J&B. Or like cutting.
Yeah.
Like I'll learn how to drink scotch
But
and
how
I would
much
crack it
Islay
like
is in
so
that?
smooth.
That's the question. You don't know.
Very little.
Yeah.
So I think it must have been Lefroy because the bar I worked at in Kalamazoo, I think that was our only one.
Yeah.
Like that was the Islay single malt that we had.
Yeah. Yeah, I just had to start off on the gentler end of the scale. Bowmore is still smoky, don't get me wrong, but it's not nearly as maybe robustly smoky in the 12-year as Ardbeg or Lefroy, for instance.
Right.
So,
and again, the analog is hoppy beers, right? Like certain people love some hoppy beers because they're balanced by malt and they're just really well integrated, like Two Hearted.
Yeah.
And then other ones are really front hop loaded and more aggressive, like Humalipalicious from Shorts. Yeah. Those are two IPAs in nearly the same exact ABV, both readily available flagship IPAs from different breweries, and a really good example of how one brewery does that style and how another one does that style.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair. And now, so Bowmore is one of the oldest distilleries in Scotland, and therefore also Islay. It's the oldest recorded licensed distillery in Islay, and it's translated to Great Reef or Sea Rock Bowmore.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm. It was started in 1779 by John Simpson and then was bought out by Glaswegian twins James and William Mutter, who expanded the distillery in 1837 that is. And their kind of greatest inclusion to the distillery is actually creating a lade to divert fresh water from the River Lagan to their distillery. And they say that the River Lagan and other waters in Islay are some of the best kind of compound and molecular structures water to create really smooth whiskey. Same reason why everyone in Kentucky likes to talk about their limestone, right?
Yep.
For instance, kind of giving it more clarity and
Same reason why if you're a vodka nerd, you should drink Rika and save a bunch of money because it's literally the Icelandic water that has a huge part in making that so very, very good.
So Bowmore is still open today. It was closed between 1940 and 1943 because the Royal Air Force actually commandeered the distillery and used it as an operating station for 3 squadrons during that time.
An air quotes operating station.
Operating station. Maybe
real
they drank
life
all the whiskey and just hung out. Maybe they didn't.
I know, guys. We got to commandeer something. I know just the place.
What about this guy?
Yeah. Let's get. We'll stay there. We'll totally do some work. We'll do work like 42% of the time.
I mean,
they did actually fly airplanes out of it, so they must have at least done that.
No, I know.
But I don't feel like Scotland.
Not disparaging the RAF right now.
Scotland didn't have a very big part in World War II, did they?
Oh yeah.
Scotland's
still part of the British Empire.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Yeah. Ireland had less of a play, if that's maybe what you're thinking about.
Could be. Yeah.
Although they did have.
I'm no history major. I just like to drink scotch.
Fair.
Continue, Ms. Spencer.
No, no big deal. So, I will say that
you just any Scots person who just listens to this, oh fuck, we didn't.
For real, they're like, fuck this kid.
Queen Elizabeth II did make her first official visit to Islay to their distillery in 1980. She's presented with her own cask.
Took her long enough
for the visit. She didn't get out much.
She
actually got out a lot.
She just had like her
smoke that much.
Platinum or diamond. What is it called? What's the word for that, Booms?
I don't know what you're trying to say, Mark.
When they celebrate her being queen for
like a centenary.
Yeah. But she just had her like platinum or diamond one. I was like, good Lord.
Yeah, and they celebrated it by pumping her full of more alien technology to keep her alive for longer.
Yo, it's because she drinks scotch that she's alive this long.
Well, actually,
daily nips.
What she did at this one,
it's important. Preserved DNA from bog babies.
She's getting infected.
Yeah, like what do you think they use those bog people for?
I'll live forever.
The moral of the story, though, is she said that Camilla can, in fact, be queen when she dies.
Oh,
in the next 40 years.
In the next 40 years. Charles is going to die before Elizabeth dies.
Yeah. My body might die, but my living brain will continue to reign.
It's going to be very Futurama, the preserved head thing, in a jar.
To get back to what I was saying, just to finish it off, boys, is that the cask that she was gifted, all the bottles were sold, and profits for those were given to local charities, and that Morrison Bowmore Distillers, which is their official title, is currently owned by Beam Suntory as of 2014.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
It's really, really nice. In 1957, they also released the oldest ever Islay single malt. And it was in the number 1 maturing vaults for 54 years, and only 12 bottles exist.
Yeah, 55 years.
A fun fact.
So it'd be,
Because they released it in
It's set in the
2012.
vaults.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like anytime booms that you have fun fact in the script before you say, you have to be like, fun fact. So Jonathan Gold can be like, bah, bah.
Oh, I should do it before the fact, not after the fact?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or either way. As long as Jonathan Gold puts, fun fact.
I would just put my arms up like this.
Yeah. Just watch your hands because I'm in the middle. And if he starts doing it, you start doing it.
That's it. We'll both just smack, John Foley in the face.
Yeah.
And then it'll be fun facts.
Yeah. Then I'll sweep.
Yeah.
Screw this.
Sweep the leg. Sweep the leg.
One of the things I like
It's about our
most,
bag. I'm leaving.
one of the things I like the most about Bummer is it does have the smoke and it has like a robust kind of maltiness, but it also has honey, and I in particular taste black currants out of it, which I find to be incredibly pleasurable.
Yes, quite pleasurable.
It's a really different, stylistically different whiskey
It is.
It is, yeah.
than Ardbeg, and you're left with a whole lot more sweetness and a lot more fruit and a lot more of the honey on the finish than you are with Ardbeg, where the smoke plays more back palate.
The sherry involved with this in particular is
Very
really
cool.
predominant. Really, really nice.
Delicious and nutritious.
Mm-hmm.
You guys want to talk about Bruichladdich?
Brookline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pronounced like that, Bruichladdich, but spelled wholly differently
Yes.
in my mind as far as understanding the English language.
Bruichladdich. Yeah. Bruichladdich.
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 It translates to the shore bank or the bank of the shore. Actually, the same thing from Scots Gaelic.
That place
It was-
over there by the water?
Yeah. And it was founded in 1881 by brothers William, John, and Robert Harvey, alongside their sister Mary, although she was not listed in documentation.
That's
Mary.
rude.
The family had inherited their father's Yorker and Dundas Hill distilleries in Glasgow. So eventually, two of the brothers will kind of like hit those two distilleries, and the brother that stays behind, so to speak, is William. He does stay on Islay, becomes a master distiller, and his children follow up with ownership and operations. One of the major tools of their success was the invention of the flat-bottom steamboat, which was called the Glasgow Puffer.
Nice.
It was a bulky item, but it allowed a lot of their grain and stuff to be sent from the West Coast and more easily transportable to Islay, where they would kind of process it. So they didn't grow any of the grain on the island for Bruichladdich, at least initially. And it becomes more economically viable to do this. So you're sending your grain from Inverness via the Caledonian Canal to the distillery to be further produced.
Father, how we get our bog babies to the other side of the island? Just put it in the puffer. We left Mary behind. She'll check it in.
Oh my god. That's going to make such an interesting Netflix drama later on, you guys. Just saying.
It's like, but I'm not dead yet. You will be in a minute.
The distillery did have a period of time where it was closed, refurbished, opened, closed again, et cetera, et cetera. It was closed and eventually passed hand to private investors, Mark Rainier and Simon Coughlin. Eventually, they're bought out by White and McKay in 2000 and initially purchased privately, but now that team operates under Remy Cointreau.
Mm-hmm. And White and McKay now focuses on
Jura.
Jura
Yeah.
and Dalmore.
Should be noted too, they're probably their most popular expression, the classic Lottie,
Yeah.
has this fun
Goofy bottle.
turquoise bottle.
I love that color.
On the camera, it looks kind of gray, but it is in fact turquoise, like
Yeah.
light blue. And yeah, it's very distinctive on the shelf. Great marketing on their part, I think.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah. And it should also be noted that the puffer is still on the water. It is now a pleasure party puffer. And you can take pleasure party puffer tours all around the
I thought
island.
that was like in Colorado. Now Detroit and
I
other
don't.
places
If
that allow
if
for.
that puffer is not rolling drunk
Legal
people
puffer
around that
language.
island in the summertime.
Oh, I didn't think they were drunk. I thought they were smoking.
Oh, well,
Oh.
Sure.
Layers.
Yeah.
All right.
Ogres. Onions, layers.
Classic Laddie is what you have in front of you.
Yeah.
It's their unsmoked, unpeated,
Yeah.
unpeated Islay. So it's a 10-year expression.
Not all Islay whiskey is peated.
Indeed. This one's crisp,
Important takeaway.
crisp, gentle, lots of lemon and daffodil and creamy chocolate malted milkshake is what I get out of it.
Yeah, and an unmalted Islay won't taste like, an unpeated Islay won't taste like another unpeated whiskey from somewhere else. There is still a regionality to the flavor.
Terroir.
Yeah, which is what we speak about when we speak about
Oh,
terroir.
booms on the script. I see it. What do you got?
Fun fact.
Oh.
Fun fact. I have a lot of them in this one. I really like Islay. Bruichladdich continues to operate in its original 1881 layout with a good percentage of the original Victorian Victorian era equipment still today.
And for our
They only
market,
modernized a few things.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
For our market, Bruichladdich also makes probably the peatiest whiskey in the world, the Octomore, which we'll do at the end.
Because you don't want
Because
to
you can't taste anything
only
else
smoke.
after you drink it.
But we did talk about it being like 300 plus parts per million.
I like how you looked at me.
He thought you picked up right
Oh,
there.
you thought
I'm
I was
telling
going to
you,
kill this?
I'm
and
telling
then
you
pour
not to drink
Octomore?
it now. We're going to drink it at the end.
Fine.
Because special things are things we wait for.
Fine. Okay, Dad.
Mhm.
He is the dad of the
Ah.
All right, alphabetically speaking, next would be up is Bunnahabhain. It is maybe the least easily pronounceable for the average American
Yeah.
because of the combination of lots of things, including the BH, which makes a V sound.
A V sound. Yes.
And
VU.
this is very long.
NNAHABHAIN.
Bunnahabhain. Bunnahabhain? Bunnahabhain.
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 The BH, the V thing is,
The BH
is really the
makes
most.
Bunnahabhain.
Yeah.
It's a great distillery. It is not unpeated, but its peat percentage in
Really
this
low.
particular bottle is very low.
Yeah.
So it might
It's
be
the
in
12-year
that, like,
expression.
just above 10 ppm range, where you can notice it, but barely.
Mhm.
And that's dessert whiskey to me right there.
It's
It
so
really
malty.
is, yeah.
Yeah.
So like toffee and truffle and
Oh, what's the word?
It's dark.
Treacle.
Treacle,
Yeah.
yes.
Tarts.
I was hoping someone would bring up that
Yeah.
word because it's a great word.
It's a great word.
So
For
call my next cat.
for people who don't know what
Yeah.
treacle is, Booms, throw it down. What is treacle?
Treacle is a delicious UK dessert. It's basically a tart, so you've got kind of like a shortbready crust on the bottom, and then it's a combination of like golden syrup and basically just all this caramely goodness. You can add things like hazelnuts. More often than not, you're actually getting like a biscuity combination of like the creamy caramel treacle insides. Also has like a crunchy biscuity texture. It's lovely. I would. 10
I
out of
want
10
one of
would
those.
recommend.
Yeah,
Where's
that'd be
Chase
good.
at? Get Chase on that.
He's our local baker slash server slash bartender.
What's his company? Chase Bakes or something like that?
The
We
Chase-
should really know that.
The Chase Bake.
The Chase Bake.
Chase
We're gonna fix that.
The Chase Bake.
We're gonna
I think
fix
it's a great name.
Oh my God.
I'm into it.
We're gonna fix it.
You can definitely do cream puffs and cinnamon buns. And
And a hell of a focaccia.
It's true.
I did not try the focaccia.
Oh, the focaccia he makes is so good.
I believe
It's
it.
so good.
Yeah.
Anyhow,
But
Bunnahabhain.
Bunnahabhain, it was established in 1881, much like Bruichladdich. Actually, this is the one that I know the least about, but I do adore it as a whiskey.
Do we?
Well, we kind of threw him in at the end.
Yeah.
We
Because
did
we didn't
add
want
it.
to
We did
not
add it.
mention him.
Yeah.
But we didn't do the full research on
No.
them.
Moral of the
Was
story
delicious.
is established, what, 1881, we said?
Mhm.
Mhm.
Come in, try it. It's fantastic.
Beautiful stuff.
If you want a dessert Islay Scotch, this is the one.
It's a really good one for cheese too.
It's also a great one to
Yes.
introduce to people if they're wanting to dip their toe into scotch,
Mhm.
if they're already a bourbon drinker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so we've got little
3
on that.
more.
We'll go on to Cowl, and it is pronounced Cowl Isla. Even though I said that Isla, it's Isla.
Really? I've always said Isla, but it's Isla, huh?
Well, because it's spelled differently than Isla,
Yeah.
right? There's no Y.
Right.
I
So,
always pronounce it Coila.
Isla.
Cowl Isla.
Yeah.
That's what I got.
Yeah.
Tell them about the video on YouTube. People can check it out.
Oh, we mentioned this before. Yeah. But okay, so if you haven't heard us mention this before, I'm not sure who knows him from where, but Brian Cox has been a pretty great actor for a long time. He was in Deadwood. He was in
Super
Troopers. Yeah. He gets
Brian Cox.
super hammered on Johnny Walker and pisses on a police car in Super Troopers. He's in the show Succession, which I know is a big King
It's a
Lear
big one now, yeah.
riff. Yeah, it's supposed to be really great. And it was either Esquire or GQ. I really should know this because many times as I tell people about it, but they commissioned him to do a series of 3-second videos on YouTube where it's great. He looks very smug and very confident, and he's got a smoking jacket, and he's just sitting there like a proper Scotsman in front of a fire, and each video is about 3 seconds long, and he just correctly pronounces every single distillery in Scotland, which is pretty useful if you want to sound like you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Also, it's something I want service staff usually to watch.
Yeah.
I
Because they will
you're
help
looking
you.
at me because I often mispronounce things.
No, I'm looking at you because you're the pronunciation guru here. Also,
yeah.
like you're the one who
Or should I say, because like I know Glenmoe is a different pronunciation than I am used to because I
Glenmorangie.
learned it the wrong way, which
Yeah.
is Glenmorangie. but it's Glenmorangie.
Morangie, yeah, like you're saying the word orange.
Morangie. Some reason
And I clarified that with David Blackmore when I talked to him.
No, I believe you. I was just saying. Yeah. I learned it wrong the first time, so that's the one that I'm the most.
Yeah, Oban
fluffled
is the
with.
one that a lot of people pronounce incorrectly.
Say Oban.
Say Oban, but it's Oban.
That's a Midwest thing.
Betty. Oh, blam, blam. That didn't work. We'll try again.
Good song.
All right, so to continue with Caol Ila, it's translated from Gaelic to the sound of Isla. So it's not sound like phonetic. It's sound as in like Puget Sound. So it's the body of water that stretches between the distillery itself and then actually the Isle of Jura. It was originally started in 1846 by Glaswegian businessman Hector Henderson.
Hector
Henderson. And in 1854, Norman Buchanan, who was the owner of the Jura distillery, also purchased Caol Ila. Eventually, it makes it into the hands of the National Distillers Limited in 1927.
You use the word consortium, which I think is great.
Yeah, it is a consortium.
Yeah.
National Distillers Limited eventually goes on to be Diageo. So the whiskey giant, spirits giant. If you like.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah.
Diageo
And they owned
owns.
Weller at one point. They owned Weller.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's just a Weller.
Characteristically lighter in style than most Islas, in my opinion. It has a beautiful peaty, floral, and peppery note, and is one of Diageo's classic single malt releases.
Not always that easy to find.
No.
So buy it if you see it.
Mm-hmm. And about 95% of what they make is actually sent to be blended into Johnny Walker Black Label.
Yeah. And R&R alum and current cheesemonger down the road at the Cheese Lady in Fenton, Charlotte Raffini, I know loves this.
She's a big
whiskey.
fan. Yeah, she is. She's a big fan.
So if you love Lottie, you love her
whiskey
cheese
review
products,
review.
and you want to get her a
She
gift.
did the whiskey review, I think, on
Give
this
her
one with me, and we did one on Clynelish,
And
because she's a huge Clynelish fan. Juvenile.
Yes.
Yeah.
I
from
did this
Compass
because it's
Spouse.
got a bell
Yeah, we
on
do
it.
got a
have
bell, yeah.
we do have an older YouTube channel with some whiskey reviews on it. If you want to try, and
Yeah,
dig through YouTube to find
They
that.
they became this.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Yeah.
That was the first version of
It's baby this.
yeah. Because this is honestly my more preferred way to do it because we have a longer span other than just like 10 minutes to talk about the products. You know,
Right.
it's more in depth and yeah. So I'm glad we're doing this instead.
Oh,
Nice.
look at all the good we
You
do.
know.
All right, we've got two more to get through. I'm going to try and go quick because I know that we've been talking for a while.
And two that really get mentioned together.
They do need to
all
get
the
mentioned
time.
together.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and by guests
they have
too.
to.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a fun fact about that. That'll be when I start talking about Lagavulin. So Lefroy.
It's the result of the old Isla mud wrestling competition over
Yeah.
between these two distilleries.
Yeah.
Right?
Are you just remembering your dreams or actual facts?
You know, if you are
He thinks
dreaming,
about Island Mud
if
Wrestling
you are
a lot.
dreaming well enough, that dream is as much a reality as your daily reality is.
True enough. Well spoken.
Well, already then.
It's true.
Alrighty. So we did cover a good amount of Lefroy's history when we talked about Bessie Williamson's reign during the Women in Whiskey episode 5. But just to recap some of their history, Lefroy translates to the Hollow of Broad Bay. It was started in 1815 by brothers Donald and Alexander Johnston and would stay in the Johnston family for about 139 years until Ian Hunter, a nephew of an original, gives the distillery over to Bessie Williamson. So currently it is owned by Fortune Brands and is divested, which is one of the brands, divested by Pernod Ricard and is also under Centauri Beam as of 2014 because Beam bought out Pernod Ricard. Fun fact. Lefroy has a very distinct coat of arms on every bottle. It is the crest of the ostrich feathers, which has the motto Ich Dien. It was given to His Royal Highness Prince Charles. Not him specifically. It was given to the Prince of Wales during the Battle of Crécy when John of Luxembourg, the King of Bohemia, died, and at the time he was battling with a tutor. So he gave the crest to him, and now it's held by the Prince of Wales, who was currently
Charles, yeah.
Chuck.
Yes.
Good old Chuck visited the distillery in 1994, giving them their royal warrant for producing
Camilla
the
waited
whiskey
in the car until it was okay for her to come out.
with the insignia and motto. He visited the
She was already
distillery.
there, looking around the barrel.
Yeah.
He visited the distillery again in 2008. Camilla's still in the car during his 60th birthday
Oh.
celebrations.
They got bagels later.
You think
They
in
got
St.
bagels
Isla they
later.
got bagels
They
later?
flew him over from Montreal.
I would at least guess a sausage roll before the bagel.
Haggis, maybe.
For breakfast?
It's pretty traditional.
Sure.
God, I love
If there's a
haggis.
Me too.
birthday, why not?
We
So-
need to do that Robert Burns dinner again.
Yes.
We will someday. We need a pop-up chef though,
Yeah.
We know.
because I'm not making haggis.
No.
I will, but I have to do the puppet show.
Yeah, you're
Yeah, you're
committed.
you're the puppet master,
I am the producer.
which is really
Right.
so on point.
Lefroy
Now that I think
continues.
about it.
Dance.
Lefroy continues to produce a very traditional style of scotch,
It's
like the rest
my
of
wife's
Islay.
favorite single malt.
Yes, and to me, that has the most medicinal or iodine style of peat smoke.
Yeah.
Than any other Islay I've had.
Yeah, their quarter cask is tremendous.
Yeah.
Quarter cask is fantastic because, of course, that means they've got less surface area,
Split it.
more surface
Yeah.
area per whiskey
Yes.
because the barrels are smaller, and so you get like a really nice. It tastes a lot older than it is, for instance.
Extra wood.
It's very, very.
And this is
rounded.
like on the back end, there's like almost this kind of like ashy kind of quality, but in a very pleasant way.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Lagavulin, a kind of sister distillery, not really though, but I'll elaborate.
Right down the road.
Yeah, so it translates roughly to the mill of the valley. It's only 2 miles away from Lefroy.
Yeah.
And Ardbeg again is only about
Only a couple more miles.
They're all like
Yeah,
in a
they're
span of like a
yeah.
5
really
mile
close to
area,
each other,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it's one island
Yeah.
for all these distilleries. So
well, and it's 3,000 people who live on it.
that's true.
It's
Yes,
a tiny island.
Let's make it 3003. Well, plus Ange paying. So 3006, is that the number? Yeah.
An expatriate collective.
I guess we'll bring Cindy
We'll
and
work it
John
out,
too.
we'll work it
Okay,
out.
we'll
Okay, you
figure
gotta
it
have a
out.
couple extra. Yeah. At least 10.
Expatriate
Um,
collective.
So
Consortium.
it gained a lot of popularity in more recent years due to the Parks and Rec character played by Nick Offerman.
Parks and Rec.
Ron Swanson.
It should be mentioned that Parks and Rec has been massively influential
Absolutely. Yeah.
in terms of getting a little bit of Scotch awareness to a younger generation.
Yes.
It's been a big deal.
It seems like it wouldn't be that much, but it's quite a bit.
But it's so funny
Yeah.
because you get all these people who are like, "Oh, I want to try some
Second
Scotch
fourth
because I watch
space.
Parks and Rec." I'm like, "Are you sure this is the Scotch
Are
you want
you,
to try?"
yeah, are you
Yeah.
sure
And then you
this is
pour
the
from,
one?
they're like, "No, I like it." Yeah, you don't really like it, do you?
I do woodworking.
Well, and so much so that they literally have Lagavulin made an Offerman edition, which I think is what, an 11 years?
He's an owner now.
the
yeah,
release
He
of
owns
the,
stock.
He is a partial owner,
Really?
yeah.
You get it.
You go. Well, pour it then. For
Get that
yourself.
Belgian waffle out of my face.
Oh, I swear to God, I'll show you my waffle. What?
Lagavulin 11-year Offerman edition is what you're talking about. It
Yeah.
was released in 2019. He actually also had another one released just
Guinness.
this last year, the Guinness Cask
Mhm.
edition.
And interestingly, Booms, you
That'd
put
be
Done
good.
by
the,
Diageo.
Yeah.
the 8 year, which is not their normal like
No.
main
No,
expression.
I
It's normally a
like the
16
8 year as well.
There's a thing that's happening a little bit. We've seen it with Weebeastie and Ardbeg. We've seen it with Lagavulin. I think it started with non-age statement whiskeys where you could get a lot of creativity by blending together things and not being a slave to an age statement, so you could really make the whiskey that you wanted. But now you're also making whiskey from younger barrels than you ever would have.
Right.
So you see these
Right.
barrels that are sub 10 years, and these releases are really interesting because
Yeah.
they're a little bit more unhinged in terms of
Yeah,
how
they
they
got a
taste.
little bit more grit to them.
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
I kind of like that.
I do too. I mean, it's kind of a raw and burly expression of the malt.
Yeah.
And
And
the
it
process.
would be effectively an average in age at least between the 8 and the 16 year. I
Sure.
mean, not quite, it's a year off, but still close enough. And yeah, I mean, in Parks and Rec, they often refer to alcohol as jiggle juice. So I
Yeah.
would be very happy to try that smoky jiggle juice if I ever
Yeah.
get my hands on it. The Offerman.
Yeah, one of my
or the
favorite
Guinness Cask.
moments is where Leslie locks Ron in his. She gives him the gift
his
of
birthday.
a door that will only unlock from the inside.
Yes.
A bottle of Lagavulin, delivery barbecue,
Yeah.
and
Bridge over the River
it's Bridge Over the River Kwai
Bridge over the
and,
River Kwai.
and Dirty Dozen.
Yes.
Ah.
So he's got 2 films. He can drink as much whiskey as he wants, and she's
Right.
arranged for a ride home for him.
I hear that. Okay, next year on your birthday, this is what we're doing.
For
Mark
me?
and I are going to lock you in the office.
Yeah.
Give you a couple bottles you can have for free.
Although if he's in the
And we're going to put
office,
that TV downstairs.
It wouldn't need to be the office.
okay. Well, where do you want to be locked in at? The tiki. We'll put you out in the tiki hut.
I
Space heaters.
was born in February, but I would love to try it.
Hold on,
Toss
this
a space heater.
What
in
should I
there.
watch out there? The movie Alive
Die of
and The
monoxide.
Thing. We'll pick him up in 3 hours. We'll see if he's dead.
See if he's frozen or not.
The barbecue got so cold, but I had
Oh,
to keep eating it.
no. We'll put it next
This
to
on the
space
nose,
heater.
though, this Lagavulin is literally so buttery. I
Yeah,
think.
yeah. It's really nice.
Like it's like you can
Popcorn.
almost popcorn,
Like
buttered
actual popcorn, yeah.
or specifically a popcorn jelly bean, which I never liked, but I do like the smell of it.
But you can
Such a
almost
weird
like
thing.
feel like the esters and the like going from your nostril into your like palate and just coating
It's
it
so
good.
without even tasting it.
Oh yeah.
It's phenomenal.
My daughter will get visibly upset at the thought of a popcorn jelly bean.
Oh no.
She thinks they're terrible.
Have you given
I don't
her
like-
Birdie Bots every flavored beans yet?
There's
Eventually,
a booger
yeah.
flavored one.
Yeah, there is.
I know.
There's like booger, there's dirt, there's popcorn,
I was
there's
like, shut it, you millennials. All right.
vomit.
No, I like Harry Potter.
So legal distilling started at Lagavulin in 1816 by John Johnston and Archibald Campbell Brooks.
John Johnston, but everyone here calls me Becky.
But you might have recognized the name Johnston because the Johnson brothers also bought Lefroy
Johnson.
originally, initially. Yeah. So there's kind of combination
Overlap.
there, right? Overlap. Let's see. And then originally it was 2 distilleries, which were confounded into 1 distillery over time. It grew in popularity predominantly in 1862 when the blender and distiller there, John Logan Mackey, and his nephew, Peter J. Mackey, who later becomes knighted, so Sir Peter, became predominant figures. They also co-founded the Craigalackie distillery.
Nice.
Mackey is a name.
Craiglacky's excellent whiskey.
Yes, it is.
As a master distiller, Mackey is also a family name that is part of Lefroy. So you have master distillers from that same family in both distilleries.
Real quick before we get off of the Craigalackie, we carry what, the 17 and the 21?
23.
23 year. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Phenomenal whiskeys if you
Ridiculous.
want to try some.
Yeah.
It was
A little bit
part of
pricier, but really awesome.
Good Highlands. Yeah.
So in 1908, Peter Mackey opened another distillery on the site he called Malt Mill, an attempt to produce whiskey that was literally the exact same style as Lefroy. And he was never able to produce it. And it had a combination of things to do. One, they did try to match the phenol parts per million, which we mentioned earlier. They did, but the grain sources were different. The water sources were different. The geographic height of the 2 distilleries were even different, even though they were 2 miles away. And so they were never able to produce the same exact style of whiskey. Although a lot of people do taste similar correlations.
This is
between
back
the
into
two.
Scotch
It's like par
in
par and
general
par.
too. Like every little thing, every little point in the process matters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With
So
this
again,
type
we're
of
seeing
whiskey.
like is impartation a word? I don't, but the effect of terroir, right?
Yeah.
Because even though they're
impart-
2 miles away,
Impart-
How it's imparted.
Yeah.
yes, yeah.
And the fact that you are using spent barrels and you are using a regular oak barrel, you don't have control over the manipulation of the char and of the newly charred
Right.
barrel.
Yeah.
So you can't cover anything with that.
Yep.
You just have to make the whiskey.
Because again, if you're unaware, Scotch, they're buying spent bourbon barrels.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So they
typically.
can't.
Typically.
Typically, yeah. So they're not.
They wouldn't have been back in the day.
They're not
No.
dictating the char
It's
on the
more
barrel
common.
or what type of wood the barrel is
Right.
made out of, anything
Right.
like that. So it's all in the grain and the water and the peat. And
Listen, there's nothing against bourbon. Bourbon taters can get really mad at me. There's nothing
You
against
said
bourbon.
Bourbon taters.
Taters.
That's what I heard.
Yeah.
You're just a bourbon tater.
Yeah.
You should call them
Or
bourbon knobs. 'cause
regular
it's corn.
bourbon. Oh, no.
Oh.
Anyway,
Bourbon knobs.
there's nothing wrong
Trademark.
with bourbon.
Talk.
However, the reason you can put out a 4-year-old bourbon and have it still taste good is because you've got very sweet grain and a very specific barrel application process that plays to the sweetness of the grain that creates very, very pleasing sweet flavors right away. And that can cover a lot of things: immaturity of distillate, certain flaws that are going along in the aging process. You can do a lot of things that you can't do in Scotland. And I think a lot of what the raw whiskey is hidden by that process and manipulated by it. And that's good because that's what people like, but it's not that way in this. And you really taste what it is.
Yeah,
It can be
absolutely.
minute differences, even just they have to have 2 different pot stills, for instance, right?
Yes.
So they could have the exact same style of pot still, but one technical flaw or difference between those 2 stills can create a huge range of difference in
Yeah.
esters,
If there's
Either
even like
some
a
esters
minute
that-
crack in the still
Yeah.
or anything like that.
or
Yeah.
more welding material was used on this one versus that one, so it actually creates a slightly higher heat than
Yeah.
another one.
Yep.
You know,
Mhm.
weird little differences.
And again, not to disparage anything that's being done in Kentucky or otherwise, but the delicateness of that process and the resultant liquid is why I will always be so attracted to Scotch.
Mhm.
Fair. Yeah, and then to round out the Lagavulin distillery history, they did close during World War II, and then again in 1951 when there was a massive fire that broke out. They actually now exclusively use maltings from Port Ellen, which we talked about earlier, because their malting floors have just ran through so much destruction that they can't do it anymore. Yeah. And it's owned by Diageo, so it's Port Ellen at this point, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, combine, waste not, want not.
Yes. Monopolies, control.
Monopolies, consortiums,
Suppression.
all that stuff.
Lapsing Souchong. I forgot about this in my notes.
It's tea.
That tea?
Yep.
Oh, like 50% of the
So my
flavor I
roommate
get
in
out of it.
Never
college,
had this.
my roommate in
It's
college
really
had
nice.
Lapsang Souchong black tea, and I would grab it from him every now and then because I think he had it because he thought it was really cool to have it.
Where does
But
it
then he
originate
never.
from?
It's
Do you know?
Chinese,
It's Chinese, yeah.
and then he
Okay.
never
It'd be
drank
like the
it.
equivalent of popularity of matcha these days.
Oh my god, it was
It got
huge.
really highly popular.
was
in,
huge.
like,
What
the
is it
hippie
called?
counterculture.
Lapsang
Lapsang
Souchong?
Souchong, yeah. So my roommate had it. I think he thought it was really cool to be a guy who had it, but I never saw him drink any of it. So eventually, I started to
He
steal
was just
some of
that
it.
kind of guy.
In some ways, yes.
Yeah.
And I would grab it and steep it, and sometimes make it. And I think because I started to really learn how to like it,
Sure.
because I already liked Earl Grey, and I was like, well, I'm
Yeah.
gonna learn how to like this too. And it was weird at first, but I became very fond of it, and I think that was actually educational in learning how to like
Spirits,
Scotch in particular.
in particular.
See, now I want to try this tea so I can
It's good,
kind of
dude. Yeah,
make
it's
that
really
correlation between the tea and vodka.
Good. It's good.
Yeah.
You should get some.
Well, where do I get it at?
Ann Arbor
Markets.
Spice Merchants probably at this point, because I think Crazy Wisdom is rest in
Closing,
peace, going out of
closed,
business. Yeah. Even witchcraft can't save some businesses, unfortunately.
So let's circle back around
If
to
we could, already.
Brook Lottie real quick.
Yeah.
Because we need to drink some Octomore.
Oh,
And like John said, this is the biggest and baddest of boys in the peated Scotch world.
I'm
I
gonna
would
have
say.
some peaty burps tomorrow. Is what I'm
Yes.
saying.
Yeah. You will sweat this one out in the shower, that's for sure. 'cause,
this stuff is great.
It's aggressive, and I think even on the
So we've got
a heavy pour.
That
phenol
is a heavy
parts
pour.
per million
whoops.
at what do we got here?
Yeah, they put the ppm on the label.
Tell me, it's on there.
It's somewhere
194.
194,
194.
123 proof.
Woo!
So not the highest ppm that they have produced.
We've seen it in the 300s.
And I just want you guys to know, as you're pouring your own drams, we do also have a cocktail to drink after this.
Well,
I'm
So
having only the tiniest bit.
yeah,
I also have to
Octomore.
work after this.
Yeah.
Booms is the real trooper. She is the only one that has to work after these podcasts, and we appreciate her for doing it.
Happy Tuesday, y'all.
yeah,
I like Tuesdays. It's industry night, and I also get the coolest regulars. So
it's true.
Yeah, Tuesdays industry night. If you're in the restaurant industry, 20% off
your dad.
cocktails.
Cocktails.
Yes.
Yeah. Not drams because we have a whiskey.
We have Whiskey Wednesday for
We have
for
a
drams.
different day for
Wednesday,
that. Yeah.
yeah.
But let's try it, guys. Let's
Oh,
taste this
Cheers.
fine Octomore.
I know it's.
It
heavy.
jumps right up your nose,
It
like
does.
right away.
Yeah.
It's also high gravity, so it smells a lot colder. Does that sound weird?
It
No.
smells colder is an apt assessment, I think.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But when you
There's a really pleasing, creamy, kind of rich sweetness,
yeah,
like a real like bready pastry sweetness right on the beginning of it.
Sure.
Or-
yeah, I can see that.
you know how like after dinner mints have like a like that pastille style after dinner
Yeah.
mint has that like creamy quality to
Yeah.
it, but also chilling.
Sure.
I get mint a lot out of this.
That's a good
It's just
assessment.
sweet.
Booms.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is phenomenal.
Lovely.
My teeth taste smoky though now.
But my number one recommendation with this whiskey is don't drink it after you do a barrel proof tasting with Eddie Russell.
Is that what you
And-
did?
No,
No,
we don't do that.
no. In Ann Arbor, don't do it. Don't do it.
No. We were at a.
What was that?
It messed
You
you
guys
up
are
so
huge.
much.
I can't
You don't
even
even remember
remember.
what we did.
I don't even remember.
We went to
You might
a.
have cried.
No, we went to a little book.
Oh, I definitely
We went
cried.
to a little book vertical with Freddie.
That's
No.
what it was. Freddie, no, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then we got back here
Oh my God. All I remember is I bought like 3 pours of this
for me
after-
and Robert.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you, yeah.
It was rough.
Then
But
he
it was a great time.
Yeah,
I had a
thank you, boys.
fantastic evening.
Then he had a mouthful of cookies.
Yum.
Oh.
But like Cookie Monster style mouthful.
No, he
cookies,
couldn't
like
talk.
No.
I wish you did.
Yeah. Oh well.
So, to kind of round out this episode, we're going to do another
Is there a long-
cocktail demo.
Yes, please.
We are.
Booms.
Is this our longest episode?
Yes, I was just about to say that too. This is probably the longest episode we've ever
Where are we
done.
at?
with the kind of vamping we did beforehand, we're probably at about like an hour and 10 minutes.
Fun. All right, let's do a cocktail and
So-
let's send them on their way.
About 10 minutes
so
bigger than
everyone,
Listen, it's February. What else do you have to do?
for real, just listen to our
This is going to happen
we have a
after.
good time.
This is going to air after the Super Bowl, even.
It will, yes.
So, I mean, there's nothing more for you to look forward to except for the eventual reprieve in spring of whatever existential. I don't know. Eventuality.
Where are you going with this?
I'm just saying that in winter it's really hard, easy to get in your head, and it's very, very difficult to come out of it. So if we can provide an
that's fair.
hour's
That's
worth of reprieve from all the nonsense,
Yes.
or even 45 minutes, and then you got bored and turned us off.
I'll give you all the reprieve.
I just realized I forgot to get you a
Yeah, I
hot
need a
strainer.
strainer.
Yeah.
So for this episode, for the Islay Scotch episode, we're making a smoky martini. You said, John, you had found another name. for
No,
this
I
cocktail?
didn't. So, like, the interesting thing about Islay Scotch is that it's almost devoid of signature cocktails that really feature the whiskey.
Thank
Almost always when it's used in a cocktail, it's used as an accent flavor, which makes sense because if you're going to put it into a drink that anybody other than an Islay Scotch drinker is going to want to consume, you have to have it be an accent. Otherwise, it's too much, and then you might turn off the drinker.
So it's really imparting, smoke and like maybe some malt.
Yeah. So there's this cocktail called the Smoky Martini, which at first I kind of didn't like the name. And then as I thought about it as we were sitting here, I actually do. I dislike things that are called such and such martini. Chocolate martini,
Berry martini.
raspberry martini. Yeah, because to me, the definition of a martini is gin, vermouth, and maybe orange bitters and whatever garnish you use, or vodka and vermouth and whatever garnish you use. A martini is a specific type of drink, not just something served in stemware. But I feel like this is a really, really honest version of a martini. It is still a martini. You're just using scotch along with gin and vermouth, and in our case, orange bitters.
Yeah.
And you're using Islay Scotch as a way to impart earthy smokiness to all the botanicals, which is a natural fit. So it's and vermouth is very botanical as well.
Yeah, and you can find a lot of the same botanicals of gin in Islay Scotches because it's very earthy. So
And
you
in
get, like,
vermouth.
lavender and heather and
And all these things will naturally work together.
John, do you want to give them the recipe and the build?
The build of the recipe, what we did was we did 2.5 ounces of gin. And what'd you use?
I used Tanqueray.
Tanqueray.
Yep.
This is how we Tanqueray. And then we used 3/4 of an ounce.
You don't like the zest in there, right?
I don't like it in there. I like it zested on top and not actually
Correct.
in there. Yeah. And then we used 3/4 of an ounce of Ardbeg 10 and a 1/2 ounce of Dolan dry vermouth, which is a French dry vermouth, and 2 dashes of orange bitters, Angostura orange bitters. And it's stirred. So like any drink that's all spirit, you add it to a tin or a glass, stir it well with ice for about 20, 25 seconds, and then strain it.
And as I was doing it, I think it cannot be understated that like with a cocktail like this, don't feel like you're stirring it too much. Like you want to get it really chilled and like not too diluted.
Yeah.
So
Temperature is a
big important
Cold.
factor. Yeah.
Yeah. Remember, a martini should be an extremely small, extremely potent cocktail.
Yes.
A martini is not the whole album. It's the banger single. It's meant to be consumed in about 10 or 15 minutes. You're not supposed to drink them all night long. It's meant to be like clean, strong, and cold and refreshing.
Yeah.
Not a ballad, more a banger.
Yeah.
And so as we're sipping on this, I do want to say thank you again, right?
Yeah.
To Ilogic Media
Yeah.
for producing this for us and all the fun stuff that Jonathan Cole does for us
It's so good.
on the podcast.
That's good.
Oh yeah, it is.
That's real good.
It's real
Because the
smooth.
smoke is
Yeah.
very light, but it
Uh-huh.
makes all the difference.
It reinforces everything else.
Yeah.
It's
Someone
going on.
asked me the other day, what do you add to your martini as a bartender to like make it a little interesting? I usually do chartreuse. So that's one of my favorite.
Sure,
yeah.
kind of
Like an
added
Alaskan,
herbal
yeah,
flavor,
exactly,
but I'm
yeah.
gonna start doing this.
I'm going to start doing this too.
And do be sure to check us out on all of our social medias. Instagram, we're Relief and Resource. Facebook, The Relief and Resource Co.
We are
Twitter,
streaming.
Relief_Resource. as
And
well.
join us next time for episode number 20.
Episode number 20.
Yeah.
Remember what
yeah.
20 is going to be?
I don't remember what
It's
20
a
is.
I don't
Surprise.
remember. We drank a lot of scotch today.
Well, no, but we made the list forever.
Yeah, we did. But I still don't recall.
Well, thank
So
you,
find out
everybody.
With us next time.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Yes.
Huzzah. Cheers.
Cheers, guys.
Yachida.
Sancha.
Prost.
Nostrovia. Goodbye. Luckily, they're breaded perfectly and filled with ancient aged gouda. You pump the cheese fuckers full of gouda, and then you serve it with a smoked fish, roasted tomato remoulade, fire pepper sauce.
It's just seafish.
First, you have to get that fixed. Last time we went to Hafalaga, I could smell your gouda dick a mile away, and now I'm sitting next to you, and it's very pungent.
This is a quote from Bridget.
Tip of the tongue, the teeth, the lips. I'll put my bagels inside your face.